Hello, good afternoon everyone, and welcome back to Havering Online Futures Week. I can't quite believe we are on day 4 already, and we hope you've learned lots over the last few days. So yesterday we had an application workshop with Charlie from the University of Roehampton, who gave us lots of advice on what to include in personal statements, when to write them, and how to identify transferable skills within your experiences. So today we're really excited to be joined by Jo Sampson from Queen Mary University, London. And Jo's going to be telling you all about degree apprenticeships. So you may have heard the phrase degree apprenticeships before, but you might not be sure what it means. And this might be because it's a relatively new route into higher education, where you can earn a degree, but also gain work experience and without the student debt. So before we get started and I hand over to Jo, I just have a couple of things to ask. So as ever, please do complete the Survey Monkey, which is in the description of the YouTube video below. So do take a moment now to scroll down, find the link to our survey and complete that. This will also allow you the opportunity to submit any questions that you have for Jo, so do make sure you fill that in so Jo can answer your questions at the end of the session. Okay, so I will briefly just go through what we've done so far this week and what's coming up. So Monday we had our subject tasters. As I mentioned yesterday, they're still live, so do log on and take advantage of those. On Tuesday we heard about student finance from Middlesex University. Again, that is also still available for you on YouTube, so log on to that and learn a bit more about student finance. And yesterday we had Charlie talking about how to apply to university. Today we've got Jo from Queen Mary University, London, talking about degree apprenticeships. And finally, tomorrow we're finishing with a great session from Ella from Access HE, giving you lots of tips on how to stay motivated and resilient when you're working independently. Okay, as ever as well, make sure you've got a pen and piece of paper to hand so you can take lots of notes as you go through. Do complete the mini survey at the bottom of the page in the YouTube description and take part. So these are for you, so do take part and get involved, ask lots of questions, and we hope you gain lots of information from this. So I'm going to hand over to Jo now, who is going to tell you more about degree apprenticeships. So over to you, Jo.
Great, thank you very much. Right, so I just need to share my screen. Okay, hopefully that's working. Let me know if it's not. So yes, thanks for inviting me along today. I'm going to talk to you about degree apprenticeships and what these are, give you a bit of an introduction to them and a few examples. So first of all, who am I? So as Michelle's already said, my name's Jo. I'm a student recruitment and widening participation manager at Queen Mary, which basically means I work in the team that comes out usually when we can to schools and colleges and delivers these kind of presentations and workshops and also a lot of on-campus events to try and kind of keep you guys informed about what your options are for the future. In terms of what I'm going to cover today, as I've kind of touched on already, first of all, we're going to think about what actually is a degree apprenticeship and actually what is an apprenticeship as well, full stop. We're going to look at the degree apprenticeship versus the traditional university route. So you've had a few workshops already this week, which will have been focused on probably what's considered a more traditional route to university. So we'll look at how the degree apprenticeship options differ to that. We're going to have a look at how to find degree apprenticeships. So, you know, how to look for them in the first place, what is out there, including some examples. And then I will go through a quick summary and take any questions. First of all, actually, I've got a very quick video, which I really hope does work. Oh. Sorry, do I need to share the sound as well?
Yes, please, Jo. We can hear it a little bit, but if you're able to share the sound, that would be great.
My mum would have liked for me to go to university. That's what's...
Sorry, technical issues.
We can hear that, Joe. We did hear that.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
My mum would have liked for me to go to university. That's what sort of expected of me. And then when I did tell her I was going to go for apprenticeship, she was like, what? An apprenticeship? Are they even like, they're not good.
But when I'd explained to her that I would still be getting a degree, she was all for it.
I want to earn and learn at the same time. And that's, you know, the benefits and the beauty of having an apprenticeship.
Okay, so that is a very quick overview of what an apprenticeship, degree apprenticeship is. But first of all, I want to talk to you about what an actual apprenticeship is more generally, because you probably will have heard of the term apprenticeship, and not all apprenticeships are degree apprenticeships, so they do come at various different levels. What an apprenticeship is, essentially, is a package, which is a combination of work, so with a work-based element where you're gaining work experience, and also a study element. So traditionally, before degree apprenticeships were introduced, a lot of these would be kind of delivered by further education colleges with elements of work placement and then maybe 1 or 2 days a week in the classroom. And a degree apprenticeship is similar in this way. With an apprenticeship, you are earning and learning at the same time. So you are, for the majority of apprenticeships, paid a wage, but you are also working towards qualifications at the same time. So rather than just having a job, you are working towards vocational qualification, so through work-based learning. All the while, you're developing employability skills, which I'm sure has been touched on already this week, and also probably before through your careers education. These are, really important transferable skills, which will take you further into the workplace, into whatever kind of career path you choose to take, but obviously specifically relevant to the apprenticeship in the sector that you're doing. And they exist across many different sectors of employment, which we'll look at some examples of. Now, in terms of a degree apprenticeship, you'll see a lot of similarities here, but obviously the main difference is that you get a degree. So you're working towards a degree level qualification. So a degree apprentice will split their time between university study and the workplace, and they're actually employed throughout this period. So you are an employee of the company that you are working for with the apprenticeship. The great news with this is that the employer covers your tuition fees. So you will get a degree at the end of a degree apprenticeship, but you won't have any tuition fees to pay as part of that, because the employer covers that part of the apprenticeship through the apprenticeship. And then in return, as a degree apprenticeship, you are employed part-time with that employer. So obviously you're not necessarily full-time because you are spending some time at university, but you are an employee of that company. And these degree apprenticeships have been developed by universities, by employers, and by professional bodies, all working in partnership. And the good news with that is that means you can rest assured that all of the learning and all of the training that you will do is relevant and applicable to that particular industry. And if you want to go and work in that industry, you're going to be highly employable at the end of the process. So you've touched on application already. You do need to apply for these, and I'll touch on that again in a second. But what happens once you then become a degree apprentice and you move from an applicant to becoming a degree apprentice, you are with the employer approximately 80% of your time, and you will spend a minimum of 20% of your time at university, so as a university student. Now, at the moment, as you can imagine, that might not look the same as it has in previous years, and a lot of this is being delivered online, but it means that 20% of your time will be university learning, and 80% of your time-ish will be with the employer. So it could be that you're in lectures and in seminars as you would be as a traditional university student for that 20% of the time. Some universities have always delivered that part of the degree apprenticeship online, and obviously at the moment that is the case due to the current situation with coronavirus, but we're certainly hoping to see our degree apprentices on campus again soon. Just to give you an example, and we will look at some more sort of sector specific examples as well. This is one of our degrees which is delivered through the degree apprenticeship scheme. So the degree that the degree apprentices achieve in this case is a Bachelor's of Science in Digital and Technology Solutions. Now, our degree apprentices spend 2 days a week at Queen Mary, attending lectures, lab sessions and seminars, or at the moment, a lot of online teaching. And then 3 days a week working with their employer, applying their learning in the workplace. And you're probably thinking, Joe, you've just told me that it was 80%, 20%. The reason that we do it this way is actually that Queen Mary apprentices on their 2 days at university, they're not 9 to 5. Whereas what you might find is where a university has 1 day a week at uni and 4 days at work, that 1 day a week at uni will be solidly back-to-back lectures and classes. Whereas our degree apprentices, when they are on their university side of things, they are given a bit more free time to do some of their independent learning. But they do go full-time 5 days a week during university holidays. So that's something to bear in mind. If you really, really like your super long university summer holidays and Easter breaks, bear in mind that as a degree apprentice, you are actually employed, and a lot of employers will expect you to work full-time hours during those periods. So in terms of the differences and the similarities, the main differences with degree apprenticeships are that, well, one of the main differences is that they don't follow this academic cycle. So for university, when it comes to year 13, you'll be applying for university, and there'll be strict deadlines as to when you need to apply for university. And most university courses would then start in the following September or October time. Degree apprenticeships are actually advertised year round, as with all levels of apprenticeship. So it's not necessarily the case that these will all start in September. So if you were to take the degree apprenticeship route, whereas friends of yours take the traditional university route, it doesn't mean you'd be starting that degree apprenticeship in September. But it doesn't mean that you get to skip off of school early or not complete your sort of sixth form exams, because these do have entry requirements, and they will have expected you to have finished your studies before applying. But it's worth noting that there is a difference there. They're advertised year round, and they're not always going to be in September, because it depends on the vacancies with the employer. One that we've touched on already is that the employer and government subsidies will cover the costs of that degree apprenticeship. So in terms of where students following the traditional university route will have tuition fee debt if they take the student loan, or they will have paid tuition fees, degree apprentices don't have that. They don't have that cost because the employer covers that. Yeah, so they're the main sort of differences between the two. But there are a lot of similarities, and the main ones for you to be thinking about now, sort of as you're approaching the end of year 10 and going into year 11 and thinking about next steps, is you will need to start to research your options. It's never too early to do that, and I highly recommend that you do start to do that now, because you will need to prepare an application. Where it says places can be competitive, places for university certainly can be competitive. Places for degree apprenticeships are super competitive, because you can imagine how many people want to be applying for these options where they're not going to incur any debt. And it's also worth bearing in mind that because a degree apprenticeship is based with an employer, and they are taking you on as an employee, they're also investing in your future, they're investing in your studies, they're going to take on quite a big cost. So what they will always do is interview as part of that process. So not only do you need to prepare a really solid application, but you need to think about how you're going to start to get perhaps relevant work experience, and think about those transferable skills that are going to kind of get you through that interview process as well. Similarly, between the two, there are academic entry requirements. So where you may have already seen in some of your sessions this week, different subjects will require you to have maybe particular A-level or BTEC grades, and sometimes also specific GCSE grades in certain subjects. The same does apply for degree apprenticeships. So I'll show you a few examples of those in a second. And the main similarity really is that either way you will achieve a degree. Obviously, one of those you will have incurred tuition fee costs as part of that, but one of those you won't. But either way, you will achieve a degree. And with a degree apprenticeship, not only will you achieve a degree, but you quite often achieve professional qualifications alongside that, and also sort of membership of professional bodies. And you get an apprenticeship certificate for what that's worth as well. So in terms of the experience for you as a student, what's the offer to you as a student? Well, you will get up to 4 years of work experience alongside your study. Now, the reason that it's up to 4 years, degree apprenticeships tend to take at least a year longer than a traditional degree because of that part-time element. So you're not in kind of university as much because you have to spend this time at work. But the great thing is you're all the while you are gaining invaluable work experience alongside completing your degree. They quite often come with competitive salaries. So sort of the average salary we tend to see for a degree apprenticeship is about £20,000 a year. But that is quite a competitive salary and quite attractive salary for an 18-year-old to be kind of looking at. And often on kind of completion, that can raise to sort of 30 to 35,000 depending on the sector. In terms of progress into employment as well, degree apprentices tend to see a lot more success with kind of securing graduate jobs quite quickly afterwards, and more often than not with the employer that they've just completed the degree apprenticeship with, because they've invested in you as an apprentice, they've kind of nurtured you through this process, and actually if they've invested that time and that money in you, they're probably going to want to keep you. So our first batch of degree apprentices at Queen Mary did complete last year, and I think all but one were offered jobs with their so out of 200 degree apprentices, all but one were offered jobs with their employers, which is great. And as we've already mentioned a few times, zero student debt and a full degree qualification, which is obviously quite attractive. In terms of the student experience, the good news here is that the university that you are kind of completing that degree apprenticeship with, or the degree side of things with, you are still entitled to use all of the same kind of support services and facilities that you would as a full-time student. So you will be allocated a personal tutor, just as you would if you were doing a full-time traditional degree. Academic support is available for you, disability and dyslexia services, counselling, advice and guidance around finance, all of these things that were kind of available to students that come and take the traditional route are available to you as a degree apprentice as well. What you will need to bear in mind are the time commitments are very different. You need to be a lot more disciplined because you're going to be working a lot of the time. So choosing when you're going to be on campus and when you might want to access these facilities is going to be more difficult, but they are all on offer for you as a degree apprentice. Similarly, the facilities themselves, so the libraries and the on-campus gym, all of those kinds of things. Student discounts work slightly differently, so you can apply for like an apprentice discount card, and TfL also do kind of travel discounts for degree apprentices. But in terms of like societies, clubs, student events and that kind of thing, as a student of whichever university you were completing the degree side of things with, you would have access to those things. One of the main things to look out for is if you are kind of hoping for that on campus or moving away to university experience, accommodation might not work in quite the same way. So for example, we don't guarantee our degree apprentices on campus accommodation because they are part-time students. So a lot of degree apprentices, in fact the vast majority, are what we would term commuter students, and they're actually living kind of in the family home and commuting to work and to university as part of that. So these are all things to factor in when deciding if a degree apprenticeship is for you. In terms of the sectors that typically offer degree apprenticeships, so we've got here kind of a number of sectors listed. This is not a comprehensive list, but these are kind of growing all the time. The government are making a lot of noise at the moment about kind of investing in vocational training for young people. So you've got a couple of years before you apply to these opportunities. Bear in mind that this list is likely to grow and keep growing, to be honest, by the time you guys come to apply. So we've got business, finance and accounting, legal. So you can become a solicitor through a degree apprenticeship. You can become an accountant. You can become an architect. You can become a nurse, a paramedic, a social worker. All of these jobs that maybe, you know, a decade ago would have required you to do the traditional university route are available as degree apprenticeships. So this is really kind of exciting for you guys, and we will see these grow. In terms of employers offering degree apprenticeships, so remember, it's not just the university involved here. This is kind of a list of highlights of the employers that our degree apprenticeships are working with and working for. So dependent on the type, so we've got sort of digital technology related ones, and we've also got one which is social change, which is the kind of the middle column there. But as you can see, there are quite a few big names there. One thing that's really important to note about degree apprenticeships is actually all employers are offered what's called a levy to employ apprentices, and all employers can work with universities and professional bodies to start a new degree apprenticeship route and to advertise vacancies. So you can actually directly approach an employer and ask them if they would take you on as a degree apprentice, but they would have to be linked with the university, or they would have to look to create that link in order to set that up. But yeah, loads of employers there, and hopefully lots that you recognise. In terms of looking for degree apprenticeships, so obviously you're not going to be applying for these opportunities yet, but it's a really good idea to kind of get used to the process, get used to kind of searching for these kind of things, similarly as you should be for getting used to searching for a traditional degree. So the government has a Find an Apprenticeship website, which I'll show you in a second, but the UCAS website, which is where you would go to make a university application and to search for traditional degrees that are advertised, is also now hosting degree apprenticeships on its website. Universities themselves will have pages dedicated to their degree apprenticeships that they run, and the employers as well, the employers that are linked with them. So you will see these in a number of different places, but in terms of the Find an Apprenticeship website, the government website, is where they should all be listed. So that's a good place to start. And this is what the page will look like. So the gov.uk website has a Find an Apprenticeship page, and you have various search options there. So you can search by the specific title of the degree apprenticeship, or you can search keywords. So it might be like creative design that you're looking for. It might be finance, accounting, legal apprenticeship, something like that. You can then search by location. So you can search within the whole of England, or you can search within a radius of your home postcode. But bear in mind what we said about accommodation. If you are going to be looking for degree apprenticeships that are miles and miles away, it might be that you would then have to think about finding your own private accommodation, because it might be that university doesn't offer you a place in halls. So bear that in mind when you're looking at location of degree apprenticeships. And then in terms of the level, you will see levels ranging from 2 to 3 upwards. I think they've now named it degree apprenticeship, but it will be a level 6 or a level 7 apprenticeship that you would be looking for. This is an example of what you will see if you look for them on UCAS. So UCAS will list them, as you can see there. So the Met Police are offering currently a police constable degree apprenticeship with quite an attractive salary there of £30,000. So you'll be able to see the recruiting employer listed, and you should also see the wage or the salary that is being offered for kind of the duration of that apprenticeship. Again, it's really important to remember that you are an employee of this company, of this recruiter, whilst you are a degree apprentice. So you are entitled to holiday pay, for example, and sometimes your starting salary will kind of increase based on performance. You are treated very much as an employee as well as by the university as a student. So yeah, it's quite a different experience in that way, but quite exciting to think about. When you click through then to, so this example is the police constable degree apprenticeship, what you will see is quite a lot of information on there, but I've tried to highlight the main points that you might want to see. So you'll see the salary information here. So starting with a salary package of circa £30,000, and this increases in line with your length of service. You will also see, or you should see, the universities that offer the degree apprenticeship. So in the case of this police constable degree apprenticeship, you can do it at Brunel, University of West London, Anglia Ruskin, and at UEL. So different universities will have different specialisms and different links with industry. So it's really important that you factor this in. And whilst you are also looking at the degree apprenticeship, you're looking at the university, you're visiting open days as you would traditionally, and factoring that whole experience in, because it may be that you're kind of, you're choosing based on the degree apprenticeship and the job that you want to go for. But if a number of universities are offering it, how are you going to decide between those? It will tell you the degree qualification you will work towards. So in this case, it's a BSc in professional policing practice. So on completion of the degree apprenticeship, you will achieve that degree. And it will also tell you the academic entry requirements. So I'm not sure if you've touched on this already this week, but UCAS points are basically worked out by the grades that you will get in your level 3 qualifications. And level 3 is A-level or equivalent. So it could be IB, it could be BTEC, and the grades you get for that will amount to a certain number of UCAS points. Do note though that there will also be GCSE requirements for this. So quite often they will at least expect English and maths. If you were looking at maybe an accounting degree apprenticeship, they might be looking for a higher grade than a 4 or a 5 in maths. If it was maybe a healthcare or science related apprenticeship, they might expect to see high grades in biology and chemistry, for example. So this is why it's really good to be doing that research now, because it gives you an idea of where you need to be aiming. So this, I'm going to show you a couple of examples of Queen Mary ones here. So we've got here the BSc Digital and Technology Solutions. So it's 4 years, whereas a full-time degree you would expect typically to take 3 years, but bear in mind that's because you're going to spend quite a bit of time in the workplace. It's an undergraduate degree, which is a first degree. And as you know, the cost is free because it's covered by the employers, but we do have academic entry requirements here. So 3 A-levels grades B, BB and above for this one, or IB 30 points, or a BTEC triple distinction or equivalent. But for this one, you need a minimum grade B, which for you guys, I think will be a 6 or a 7 in maths. But what you can also see are the current employers that are offering, are partnering with us on this degree apprenticeship, and the types of jobs that you might go into. So software developer, application specialist, IT project manager, that kind of thing. And then in contrast, we've got our business management social change. Again, it takes 4 years. The A-level grade boundaries are slightly higher, and as are the BTEC and the IB. And the employer partners, again, listed there with job roles such as kind of policy and public affairs, impact and evaluation officer, planning, governance, that sort of thing. As I've said, there are a whole host of these. I'm just giving you examples, a couple of examples of ones that we offer. But now is the time to start doing your research into those, because you're going to need to prepare a strong application. You're going to need to be ready for an interview, hopefully, if you get through to that stage. And these are things that you need to bear in mind alongside your just getting the grades, because you're kind of going into the job market and higher level study at the same time. So they're going to want perhaps some work experience and evidence of transferable skills, as well as just your academic entry requirements. In terms of sort of websites that you can use to kind of have a look at moving forwards, so the Institute for Apprenticeships.org will list the Apprenticeship Standards, which is basically a list of all the different kind of sectors and careers and jobs that are either in development, so we should expect to see offered as a degree apprenticeship in the coming years, or are already approved for delivery. And you will then be able to see the employers and the universities that offer those degree standards. I would note on that when you are looking through that search, you will see some level 6 apprenticeships which are not necessarily degree apprenticeships. Although level 6 is the same level, there are some level 6 apprenticeships that don't give you a degree at the end of it and are not partnered with the universities. But you'll see that because the right ones will say degree in brackets. An example of that is a pilot one, which I found earlier, which doesn't give you a degree. The live apprenticeship vacancies, so findapprenticeship.service.gov, that's the government website that I showed you earlier. And again, that's our website there, but every university that is offering degree apprenticeship should have its own kind of page that's dedicated to those. So if you wanted to look through the university first, if that's kind of interest to you, and then see if that university is offering degree apprenticeships, you can do that too. And websites like the National Career Service will give you more information on these kinds of things. So in summary, in terms of a degree apprenticeship, the fantastic thing about them is that you can achieve a degree without any tuition fees, and you can earn sometimes a very attractive salary whilst you are learning. As I've already said, though, do bear in mind that does kind of require perhaps an extra level of discipline in comparison to taking the normal university route, because you are an employee, you're working, and you're expected to study at the same time. there are increasing amounts of degree apprenticeship opportunities across a variety of sectors, and this is growing all of the time. So maybe even in 2 to 3 years time, when you guys are applying, you might see even more opportunities in terms of the different jobs that you can do through a degree apprenticeship. But bear in mind, the application process is super competitive for these. So do start your research now. Do start to ask questions, come to things like this. It's fantastic that you're here today. Most of the information you should need is there online through university websites, but always ask questions and come to open days. Degree apprenticeships teams are always at university open days, so they'll be able to answer some of those questions. And if you've got questions now, which I believe some of you have, I'd be really pleased to try and answer them for you. That's me done.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Joe. Thank you. You are right. We've had lots of questions come through, so that is fab. If you wouldn't mind just stopping sharing your screen, and then I can share some of the questions we've had come through. So bear with me one moment. This is always a bit of a delay while we work with technology. Bear with me a second. Talk amongst yourselves.
Hopefully I can answer them.
I'm sure you will too. Right, okay, so here we go. So a great question to kick off then. So what can you do after an apprenticeship?
So specifically in terms of what you can do after a degree apprenticeship, most people after completing a degree apprenticeship do tend to go into full-time work, because as I've already mentioned, they have been working with that employer for upwards of 4 years already. They've gained a lot of experience, hopefully done a lot of really great networking, and they've built themselves up to the point where hopefully they've been offered a full-time job with quite an attractive salary. So we tend to see most degree apprentices go straight into employment, and usually with the employer that they've been with. However, bear in mind that you don't just have your apprenticeship, you also have a degree. So if you wanted to go on to postgraduate study, if you wanted to do a master's, in fact, there are some master's level degree apprenticeships, but if you wanted to do a master's, you would have that degree just as any other student that has completed a degree, so you could go on to postgraduate study. And just as loads of us that have done degrees, you don't have to be stuck in that sector that you did go into. But bear in mind that these are, I suppose, less traditionally academic often and more vocational. So the whole point of a degree apprenticeship is really that you are working towards going into a particular job. So the expectation probably is that you would be looking in that sector anyway. But yeah, you're not limited. You've got a degree behind you by that point. So.
Great, thanks, Joe. And we have another question coming up, which is linked to that. So, and we'll get to that in a second. I should also just say, if you think of any additional questions or thought of any additional questions while Joe was presenting, you can go to menti.com and submit additional questions. So if you go to menti.com and submit the code 324689, and we'll keep an eye on those as they come through. But let's move on to our next question. So I think we've covered within your presentation what a degree apprenticeship is. Would you give any other sort of pointers or advice on how it's different to going to university? Because I think that's a really good question.
It is a really good question. So yeah, the points I've touched on already with regards to like the student experience. Bear in mind that if you are looking to go to university for reasons which, you know, admittedly a lot of people do, so perhaps moving away from home, meeting new people, getting involved with kind of lots of different social events, societies, that kind of thing, because that is a huge part to the traditional side of university. That is going to be more difficult as a degree apprentice, because you're going to have to be more disciplined as a degree apprentice, because you're working quite a lot of hours, as well as this kind of more compacted time at university. So for example, we've tried to kind of sort of alleviate that by giving our degree apprentices 2 days at uni without being kind of fully blocked in. But even still, you know, you are becoming an employee of a company at the same time. So you've got more to balance, which I would say is the main difference. You need to be more disciplined, and you might not have as much time for the fun stuff as maybe the traditional university route. I guess that's the main difference, really.
Great. And I think so we had an event a little while ago that was about degree apprenticeships, and we were talking to a degree apprentice, and she answered that question as well as someone that is going through it at the moment. And she said that actually a lot of her socialising and making friends came through that workplace. So I think that's an important thing to remember, that although you won't necessarily be on campus as much as fellow students, you will also have an additional group that you can socialise with and build that network. Great stuff. So next question then. So we covered this a little bit. So what degrees are available? I don't know if you want to touch on that a little bit again, Joe.
Yeah, so my best advice for this is to have a look at the Apprenticeship Standards website or the national government website for degree apprentices, because there's a whole host of them. A lot of them are quite specialist, but you tend to see a lot of them in business management, sort of financial and accounting, increasingly in the legal sector. We're seeing quite a lot of degree apprenticeships coming up there. Healthcare, health sciences, so things like nursing, paramedic science, social work as well. What else haven't I touched on? And quite a few sort of like digital tech-based things. Obviously, that's quite an emerging sector. Yeah, we're working on some new kind of degree apprenticeships, which we're hoping to launch soon in that sort of area. But given the current situation, we might see some new ones. That social change one's probably going to be quite apt in the coming years. So yeah, basically keep an eye out, because what's available now, I believe quite strongly that will only increase. The list will only increase by the time it comes to you guys applying. But in short, lots of degrees are available.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think it's really grown in quite a short space of time. It used to be quite limited in what you could do as a degree apprenticeship, and yeah, like you say, becoming a solicitor or a policeman or going into nursing. I quite like the idea of the social change one. That sounds really interesting. So yeah, I think there will just be more and more. So as Joe says, keep an eye out on different websites to see what comes up. Okay, so this is a good question, and this is the question that I felt linked to starting a degree apprenticeship and actually realising that perhaps that subject isn't for you or that job isn't for you. So can you change apprenticeships halfway through?
You certainly can't sort of change as easily as you can in the sort of traditional degree route. Again, not that is necessarily a particularly easy process. The main thing you've got to factor in here is the process that you've been through and the fact that the employer has taken you on as a member of staff. So if you were to drop out of the kind of degree apprenticeship, it depends on what you're asking, but you can't just kind of switch to another one quite as easily as perhaps if you were to go to university full-time without doing a degree apprenticeship. And you may be like I did. I started with the degree in economics and German, and I switched in my second year to German and French because I wasn't enjoying the economic side of things. I was able to do that because it was just kind of internally to the university, but you've got the university and the employer at play here. So I would say factor that into your decisions and make sure that it is something that you really know, you're really sure that you want to do, because whilst you can't change them halfway through, obviously you're not tied in. You can leave the degree apprenticeship, but you are then going to be kind of starting afresh. It's not a case of just swapping from a police constable apprenticeship to a I don't know, solicitor apprenticeship halfway through. That's definitely not going to be possible because you've got the employer that's kind of taken you on in that job.
And I think you spoke about how competitive it is to get onto a degree apprenticeship, and you do have to have that additional layer of applying. You have that interview process. So I would just advise that you would have to go through that again, wouldn't you? If you did change your mind partway through. And another good point you made, Joe, which hopefully reassures the person that asked this question, is that although you've done a degree apprenticeship in a specific subject, that doesn't necessarily mean that you'll continue on to that into your career. You can change career and do different things, perhaps a bit more easily than a really long degree apprenticeship course. So hope that helps to answer that one. Okay, next question. So This is a nice question, but several in one. So I'll break it down slightly. So what experience can I receive from a degree apprenticeship? What courses can I take, which we've sort of covered in a bit. This is a really good question that comes up a lot, actually. I've heard this a lot. So are degree apprenticeships as highly considered as university degrees? And Joe, I will let you answer.
Okay, so the middle question I think we've covered. In terms of the first one, what experience can I receive from a degree apprenticeship? The experience that you receive is kind of very similar to, I mean, you're an employee of a company and you're a university student at the same time. So actually it's a fantastic experience. You're going to be more work ready. I mean, you're going to be in work for 4 years by the time you've actually achieved, as a minimum, by the time you've actually achieved your degree, and you're going to have a degree level qualification, and you're potentially going to have professional qualifications alongside it, professional body membership, that kind of thing. So all of these things are additional to what most traditional university students would get. That's not to say that taking the traditional university route you can't get a job or even do in a part-time way, because you can do a degree part-time and work. But the point of the degree apprenticeship is it's been designed and created by the university and the employer to kind of fit together, so that all of the learning you are doing in your lectures and in the classroom is then directly being applied in the job. So everything you're doing at uni should then make sense to you at work throughout that time period. So I would argue if you're getting a fantastic experience. As I've already kind of touched on already, our first cohort, I hope I'm right in saying they all got firsts, and they almost all got offered a guaranteed job. So when we're coming to the question of how highly considered they are, I would say increasingly more that they are equally, if not perhaps even more highly regarded than some university degrees, because you are a lot of traditional degree graduates. So like the route that I did, I'd worked as a student ambassador a little bit. I had a part-time job when I was 16, but I didn't really have I didn't have a lot of work experience, to be honest. Whereas with this, you've got your degree and you've got 4 years. You've already earned a salary for 4 years, and if you've done a good job, they will keep you on. So in answer to your question, I would say possibly more highly considered than a lot of university degrees. And I, again, think that will continue to be the case as we see more degree apprenticeships coming about.
Yeah. And I think it's a myth that they are less highly regarded. I think that's perhaps something that, has been shared before, but I think it's a total myth. You're getting the exact same standard of degree. You're still getting a degree, and I think that's something really important to remember. It's not less, it's not not as highly regarded. And Joe's absolutely right, you've got all that work experience under your belt, and like you said, Joe, most of those people that have done a degree apprenticeship have been able to build relationships with those employers over the 4 years and then be employed by them, which is it's what you want when you leave and finish a course. Like, you want to be really employable. So I would say. And
to add to that as well, in terms of, if you're thinking of them as in terms of how they're considered and how they're, I guess, ranked, obviously with universities you've got lots of league tables and lots of people kind of judging them on different metrics. That's not yet really the case for degree apprenticeships. So some of the only metrics you can use are perhaps the standard of degree that students get. So whether they got a first class degree, a 2-1, a 2-2, which you'll learn more about through the process if you haven't already, and how many of them stay. So what we call retention rates. So how many of them actually stay for the whole degree period and then complete the degree successfully. Now, for degree apprenticeships, certainly with us, our retention rates are super high. And as I said, our first cohort, I think, all got firsts. So the fact that you're applying the learning in the classroom, in a workplace, it kind of makes sense more, it matters more, and we see students achieving higher grades throughout their degree, and they're more likely to complete and progress from one year to the next. So that's a really good metric to use, and in that case they'd be better considered.
That's really helpful. Thanks, Joe. And we've had a few more questions come through, so they're just getting, the list is getting longer. So we'll move on to the next question. We did talk about this a little bit, but how many years does a degree apprenticeship last?
So on the whole, you will see them lasting for at least 4 years, because you've got what usually would take 3 years as a full-time degree plus that work-based element, but they can be anything up to 6 years. So I've seen them as long as 6 years. So that is something else to bear in mind. Obviously, it will take a bit longer than a traditional degree to get that degree level qualification, but that is because you're gaining all of this invaluable work experience at the same time. So yeah, don't look at that as a negative at all. So yeah, 4 to 6 years tends to be how long they would last.
Great, thank you. Okay, and the next question is, and this is a good question, can you do a foundation year with a degree apprenticeship? It's quite a technical question, sorry, Joe.
I've never seen it. However, it's a question that you would probably need to ask when it comes to the point of application each of the universities. So if they don't make it clear on their entry requirements, so like we had a look at the police constable one as an example, and then the 2 Queen Mary ones, our entry requirements for those are based on A-level grades, BTEC grades, IB grades, GCSE grades, that kind of thing. So whether or not if you didn't achieve those A-level grades, you could then do a foundation year and then apply for a degree apprenticeship. I don't know. I've not seen it. Can I get back to you on that one, Michelle, and let you share it with the
absolutely. And my gut instinct would be that you could, because if you think that a degree apprenticeship, like I say, you get the same qualification with a degree. We'll come back to you on that one. But yeah, very good question. The jury's out on that one, but we will follow up and confirm for you. Okay, next question, and this is very good. Is the application for an apprenticeship direct to the employers, or is it via one website, or is it both?
So the problem with at the moment, and you probably would have noticed from my slides, is that this information is in quite a lot of different places. But in terms of applying, because the interview process and everything like that, you're applying to the employer. In terms of the apprenticeship website that you find it on, is the application for apprenticeship direct to the employers or via one website? So you will see them advertised in a number of different places. You'll see them advertised on the apprenticeship website, on the university websites, but the application will go, I think I'm right in saying, to the employer.
Yeah, I'm quite sure that's the case. So you'll be able to find, if you go to Amazing Apprenticeships, they have a nice page where all the opportunities that are live at the moment are listed. And so it's almost like a job search. So how that would look as a web page. So you'll see all of them listed, and then you click through and it takes you directly to that employer to apply directly. But yeah, you're right, Joe, it is a little bit, you have to look in a few different places, but the government website is great as a starting point, so we'd definitely recommend that. Okie dokie. So this relates to what we were talking about before, but will I miss the student experience?
I mean, that's quite a personal question in terms of what your student experience is and what you want your student experience to be. So I certainly would have missed the student experience that I had I been kind of employed 3, perhaps 4 days a week, not living on campus, because those are really important things to me when I made my decision about going to university. It wasn't just about getting a degree for me, it was about moving away from quite a small town, meeting loads of new people. That was my student experience, and I would have potentially missed out on a lot of that through a degree apprenticeship. However, Michelle, as you rightly say, I would have made lots of links through the job side of the apprenticeship. So I would have work colleagues. So in terms of, making friends, meeting new people, socializing, that side of things, obviously that can still happen. Living in halls was great, and I wouldn't want to change that. So that's something to factor in. But I know a lot of people who I went to uni with who would definitely have opted for the degree apprenticeship route now if we were to rewind 10 years, because actually what was important to them was becoming a nurse or becoming a police officer. And if you know that degree apprenticeship kind of takes you directly to that level, you can be paid the whole time, you can gain work experience. That is their student experience, and that would be what they wanted. So yeah, it's quite a personal question. And it's why I would suggest doing a lot of that research now, really, so that you know what you want from your student experience.
Definitely. And it sounds really basic and silly, but doing a pros and cons list of, of those two different routes, because it is a different experience. And yeah, I think you've got to weigh up what your biggest priorities will be at that time. So yeah, I think you're right. It's quite a personal question. So the next question, Joe, we've just had through, and I apologise in advance because it's a bit of a tricky one, but it's a very valid question. So brace yourself. So what if I get fired, or if the employer goes bust? Does that stop the degree?
That's a fantastic question. If you get fired, I would imagine, similarly to being fired if you were an apprentice without being a degree apprentice, that would have quite a detrimental effect on the fact that you were doing a degree apprenticeship, because you would no longer be doing it. Whether or not it would stop the degree side of things, I mean, the degree apprenticeship is kind of a whole package. So it's not like you can do kind of that degree. If you've been offered a place on that degree apprenticeship, you can't do that degree without it being a degree apprenticeship, if you know what I mean. So yeah, in that sense, it would be the end of your degree apprenticeship. In terms of the employer going bust, you have the same employer rights when you're on a degree apprenticeship because you're employed by the company. So in terms of, I don't know, I don't want to answer this for sure because I don't know. I'd like to think you'd be offered perhaps redundancy and that kind of thing, but I don't know what would happen to the degree apprenticeship itself. The university would be partnered with a number of employers. So I imagine the university would do everything they could to try and help you to continue that degree apprenticeship with another one of the employers that they're working with. So remember, you saw those 3 columns of the employers that we work with on our different degree apprenticeships. They would probably try and match you with another one so that you could continue it. Obviously, if the employer goes bust, then the university is going to support you through that because that's not your fault. If you've been fired, I imagine that probably is the end of your degree apprenticeship, because you can't, that degree is a degree apprenticeship. You can't just kind of only do the uni side of it. It doesn't work like that. So yeah,
thanks, Joe.
Hopefully that answers that as well as I could.
Thank you very much. Thank
question,
you. Put you on the spot. And this is a good question. So I know that I would not need to sort of apply for a student loan, but are there any hidden costs?
That is a very good question. And I wouldn't like to call them hidden costs, but the student finance that you wouldn't need is the tuition fee part of the loan. Am I right in thinking was student finance yesterday?
Yes.
Yeah. So the tuition fee part of the loan, which covers the study, so the tuition, the actual cost of the course, that's the part that you wouldn't need. You would still, the maintenance loan side of things would be, you would have to consider, because as I've mentioned, you might not be, if you didn't want to live at home, for example, and you wanted to go into private rented accommodation, remember that you are earning a salary as part of this. So in terms of hidden costs, it's not necessarily a hidden cost, but you would need to factor in those costs. So your living costs as well, commuting costs perhaps, because if you're going to have to go to work every day, buying lunch, that kind of thing. So the cost that you are not going to be incurring is the tuition. It's the actual degree itself that is being paid for. Obviously your living costs, which would normally be covered by a maintenance loan, they aren't being covered by your employer directly, but they are indirectly because they're giving you a salary. So you've got to manage that money basically. Whether or not that counts as a hidden cost, I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah, good question. That's quite a technical question as well. So, and it's something that I'm not 100% sure on, but if you did do a degree apprenticeship, could you apply for a maintenance loan or maintenance support?
I'm going to do that really professional thing where you just check the answer.
Okay.
Okay.
Because I think that's a really good point, that you will, if you were going to do a degree, you're independent for the first time, you don't.
No, so you don't qualify for the maintenance loan side of things. So yeah, but remember that you are being paid a salary.
Yeah.
And in most cases, if you look at the average starting salary and the incremental increases on year, you are probably going to be earning more than you would be eligible for in a maintenance loan anyway. So yeah, I guess hidden costs, they're just other costs that you need to think about, as in, do you want to live independently while you do this? If so, is your apprenticeship salary going to cover those costs? And things like commuting to work and to university need to be factored in as well.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Joe. Thank you for answering some tricky questions there. It was fantastic. So that is the end of Joe's presentation and the Q&A. So thank you very much to Joe for talking us through all things degree apprenticeships today. Tomorrow we have our final workshop with Ella from Access HE, who is going to be giving you a really interactive session on resilience. So we do ask that you tune in for that. But thank you very much